Okay, so let's get started. Tell me a little bit about Do It and like how did it get started?
Well, it got started a long time ago in 1992. And I was already working at the University of Washington, directing the desktop computing services unit. And we gave support to people who are using desktops and laptops and so forth. They helped them use those computers. And I had already carved out a place in that organization for making sure that faculty, students, and staff with disabilities had access to technology. And so that's what I was doing. And more and more, I got interested in assistive technology. That is technology to allow people with disabilities to use computers, like screen readers for people who are blind and so forth. And that was kind of the early days in that field, and it was really kind of exciting to me. And so I just spent more time on it. And in 1992, I decided to write a grant proposal to the National Science Foundation to fund the Do It Center, where Do It stands for Disabilities, Opportunities, Internetworking, and Technology Center. And so I wanted to just take a little more holistic approach to helping people with disabilities or facilitating some of their access to technology. But think about transition from high school to college and other issues as well that students with disabilities face as they pursue higher education.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Because I was gonna ask, like, what are some of the things that you do at Do It?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's why I named it the way I did, because it's very action oriented. We started with the Do It Scholars Program, and that's a program where we work with teenagers, high school students, usually after their sophomore or junior year, and help them get ready for college and get access to technology and do some networking and all those things you need to do to be successful in college. And originally it was funded by the National Science Foundation, and it was national in scope. But later, I was able to get funding from the state of Washington to continue to fund the program beyond NSF funding for Washington state residents. And so what we do in that program, we recruit teenagers around the state who have disabilities. We like a wide range of disabilities. And then before the pandemic, they met on campus in dormitories and learned about college life and learned about negotiating in the cafeteria, working on classes, using technology, very much a college prep program. The only thing that makes it stand out is all the students have disabilities that are in that program, but a range of disabilities. And I like that range in part because we're trying to create leaders in the next generation. And so it's important that people with disabilities learn about disabilities that are different than their own.
Yeah, that's important. So like some of if I could just like ask what impact does the Do It Scholars Program have on these people with disabilities?
Well, we don't have a control group, so we can't, it's not a lab experiment, so we can't compare people who didn't have the program. But what we hear back, and we hear back from a number of stakeholders, the students themselves, their parents, people that have worked with them in some of our projects, and even our own staff, because participants in, let's say, in the Do It Scholars Program, they can continue to participate after they have been engaged in these on-site programs have been online the last couple of years for obvious reasons. And so they can continue to participate mainly by mentoring the younger scholars and just, engaging with this community as they go forward. And so we hear about a lot of things that people are doing and even getting awards and so forth. And so there's plenty of evidence that students gain more confidence because they're in the Do It program. They have just a better understanding of what they have to do in college, including asking for accommodations and getting their documentation in order and so forth. And hearing from older participants, they kind of have mentors and role models that they can kind of look forward and see themselves being successful in college and beyond.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if I could just like ask, who are some of the stakeholders that you mostly partner with that sort of get people with disabilities, not just in really education, but also in the workforce? Because I would argue that they are a vital part of our society.
Absolutely. So we take a student-centered, individual-centered stakeholder model is what we employ in the Do It program. We have a lot of other Do It programs, and they all are working with stakeholders, multiple stakeholders, but not all programs work with all stakeholders. And so we work with students with disabilities, of course, directly, like the Do It Scholars program, but we work with their families. We have a support organization of parents of children with disability and helping them, transition to adult life is our primary focus. But teachers, sometimes we work with K-12 teachers to help them set those expectations high and help students with disabilities see themselves in successful academic programs and careers. We work with technology companies to help them make their technology more inclusive and accessible to students with disabilities, but also to help them be prepared to hire students with disabilities, including the website that maybe someone uses to apply. Is it accessible to someone who's using a screen reader who happens to be blind and other people with disabilities? Making sure they have a statement on how to request an accommodation through the interview process. And then once there's an individual with a disability working in that their company, how they can make sure that those students or people have opportunities for success just like other people in their organization.
Yeah, that's great. If I could just like ask like this one last question, because I know there's a lot of stigma around disability and it's a really kind of big issue, but like how does Do It create an environment that sort of tackles the stigma around disability and at the same time create an inclusive and welcoming environment for people with disabilities?
Big question. We tackle it from a number of different perspectives. During our Do It Scholars program and other programs, we're working directly with people with disabilities. We'll have discussions around this topic and others. Sometimes people with disabilities haven't really thought about it, the stigma associated with their disability and so forth. And so being prepared to be successful in this not perfectly accessible world that we all live in, and take steps towards maybe even changing that situation. But then we work with stakeholders like people at the University of Washington and other campuses. We have a project called Access Advanced, which is attempting to increase the success of women with disabilities in academic positions in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So that shows you how we get to zero in on a stakeholder group. And we have created like a checklist to see if you make your department more inclusive of people with disabilities, including women, and so forth. And so working in this way, we give examples of how to communicate with people with disabilities, words that are not appropriate to be using, like handicapped and crippled and so forth, but even things more specifically like wheelchair bound or whatever, but just indicating that a person is a user of a wheelchair if it needs to be mentioned at all. But making people more aware of the negative connotation of just even the words that we use every day.
Yeah, I think if like we're aware of like the words that we use, then we can just sort of figure out how we can like include them, like make sure that they're a part of our sort of social life, I guess.
Mhm.
But so it's really important to like be aware of what you say as to not hurt them in
Yeah.
any way. But yeah.
Helping people be more aware of that, but doing it in a pretty friendly way too, because you don't want people to get overly concerned and think, oh, I just don't think I'll use the right words, and so I'm not going to talk to a person with a disability. You don't want to go overboard. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it is a delicate balance indeed.